In this video, I want to talk about language and language education. When thinking about Schools 4.0, I believe that all Sri Lankan children should learn Sinhalese, Tamil and English. But before getting into how, I think it's important to think a little bit about why. And when it comes to learning language, there is a functional benefit. So when I lived in Estonia about 15 years ago, it was very hard to get around because very few people knew English, only the younger generation who were learning it in school. But when we visited last year, what with joining the EU, tourism, all these things, it was very, very easy to get around with just English. So functionally, English is taking over anywhere where there is a smaller language. And we see this happening in Sri Lanka also. Like our consumer law requires that food be labeled in 2 out of English, Sinhala and Tamil, but increasingly these labels are just transliteration. So you have garlic butter in English, and in Sinhalese also it says garlic butter. So we've lost the Sinhalese word for butter, which is vendaru, and we're also seemingly losing the Sinhalese word for garlic. And nobody asks for a palaturu yusha anymore, it's a fruit juice. Right? I don't know if we ever had a Sinhalese word for or a phrase for fried rice, but now it's just become rice. And Tamil, I think, is a little bit resistant to this because some of those syllables are not there, so then they actually just write it in English, or if they do write it in Tamil, they have to write with more proper words. So from a functional sense, our languages are under threat. So that's why people are sharing memes like this. That's why there are conversations about Sinhala and Tamil education being made compulsory. But like we've discussed in other videos, making things compulsory isn't a good way to encourage somebody to learn something. So with Schools 4.0, our approach would be rather different. First of all, people will learn language if it has a functional benefit. So for English, there is a lot of resources, whether it's books or tutorials or YouTube videos or things that are available only in English. And if we want to access them, we will need to have the master in English to be able to access them. And if somebody is curious about a resource because it's going to help them to do something and the language is the barrier, then they will figure that language out. I mean, that's really how most of us improve our vocabulary. It's not by memorizing word lists. You read something in that language, you know enough of the words to be able to figure out the other word, or if you can't figure out the meaning, you'll maybe look it up in the dictionary, but it's in pursuit of something else that you care about. When language is functional, it's for some other purpose that you're using it for. And when it comes to Sinhalese and Tamil, there could be certain functional benefits like that as well. Maybe not so much in terms of formal resources, although there are some books that are only available in those languages. But when it comes to going around, so when you look at signs on the road or instructions or things like that, those things will be in the native languages. So there is a functional benefit there. There is, of course, also a functional benefit in terms of communicating with people, going to the shop or buying things or getting around in the bus or things like that. There's a functional benefit like that. But if it's left only to the functional benefit, then definitely the local languages will die out and English will become prominent because, from a functional perspective, we would all just be better off with English. Right? It's just easy on the computerization, the searching, indexing, sorting, all of those things are just easier with English. So then why does it matter that we preserve our local languages? The answer is culture and arts. So this is the books that have been written, the songs, the poetry, the drama, whether it's theater or TV or cinema, and also things like proverbs, riddles, even jokes. All of those things are culturally embedded, and yes, it is possible to translate some of those things, like we have access to some translations of works, but it's hard to capture the real essence sometimes in a translation, and that's why a lot of Sri Lankans are sort of bilingual, they'll bring in little figures of speech from Sinhala into the English conversation or from Tamil, because those things just hit you in a way that English can't do. And it works because that is culturally embedded in all of us. So if we didn't have our local languages, or we only had one of them, we'd only be able to access a small part of the cultural heritage that exists within our country, and that would be sad. And it's not only that we can't access it, we also lose the opportunity to express ourselves in it. And when it comes to how we believe children will learn these languages, it's because when you put children together who come from different language backgrounds, so there'll be Sinhala native speakers and Tamil native speakers in the same space, and maybe also English or other foreign language native speakers, and when they interact, there are relationships between these people. These are your friends, right? I understand my friend better, I can communicate with my friend better when I can speak his language, and that becomes a reason for me to connect with him. Like actually for me, so my home environment was initially Tamil and English, but later I ended up forgetting Tamil because well, they told me when I was asking why should I learn Tamil, they were telling me that you can talk to your relatives, and that was a somewhat functional thing because I wasn't really so keen to maybe talk to those relatives, and nobody was really exposing me to art and literature in Tamil, so I ended up forgetting my Tamil. But I didn't have Sinhalese in my home environment. I learned Sinhalese by playing with the kids in the neighborhood, right? So when your friends have a particular language and they are sharing stories or cinema or theater or something like that from that language, then we are also inspired to understand what this means, to engage with it. I mean, there are a lot of Sri Lankans who engage with Hindi movies even though they don't know the language, right? Because that art gives you something, there's something you enjoy in that. And when this is something that connects you with your friend, this is something that becomes even more valuable because it's not just the artistic value, but it's about your relationship with these people. So when you have people from different language backgrounds who are inhabiting the same space, they will at different times use English, use Sinhala, use Tamil to communicate whatever they need to communicate, to be inspired and interested in the aspects of the language. And that's how the mastery will happen in a natural way, where nobody is forcing you to learn something which then makes you hate the language. I mean, if you could test this in the terms of an examination, but then what will happen with language, just like what it happens with all other subjects tested that way, is that people will learn just enough to pass the exam, and after the exam they'll forget all about it. And if we approach language that way, it will really, really be sad.